From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Thursday, October 9, 2025. 3 justices of the New South Wales Supreme Court will today hand down their decision on a bid by a pro-Palestine group to demonstrate at the Sydney Opera House. The Palestine Action Group wants to assemble as many as 10,000 people at the Opera House on Sunday, but the New South Wales Police argued in court on Wednesday it's a public safety disaster waiting to happen. Taxpayers will bail out Glencore's Mount Isa copper smelter to the tune of $600 million. But its Swiss bosses say it might still close before the end of next year. Those stories are live right now at theaustralian.com.au. Chris Bowen is at war with a group of environmentalists who say Australia's renewables rollout is a mess. The Environment Minister alleges they're spreading misinformation about the sheer space needed to realise the Albanese government's ambitious renewables plans, but he can't or won't explain the numbers coming out of his own department. Today, we unpack the report and the response that's got everyone scratching their heads. At the end of last month, The Australian's rural and regional correspondent Matthew Denholm reported this.
The stunning scale of Australia's renewables rollout can be revealed. 1,000 projects costing $1.33 trillion, including 25,000 more wind towers, with 45,000 kilometres of associated roads, and 250 million solar panels on 406,000 hectares. The figures, Australia's first comprehensive glimpse of the true scale of the renewables revolution, have been compiled by conservationists and communities pushing for a better planned rollout.
Based on mapping done by Rainforest Reserves Australia, the space taken up by solar panels will need to increase from just under 30,000 hectares to more than 430,000 to meet the Albanese government's renewables goals. In his reporting, Matt explained it like this.
Effectively equivalent to almost all of metropolitan Sydney, parts of the lower Blue Mountains, and beyond Richmond and Campbelltown.
The same was done with wind turbines, this time using the city of Brisbane to demonstrate the scale. On the same day, Environment Minister Chris Bowen posted this on social media.
Some anti-renewable, pro-nuclear activists have worked out how much land renewables will take. And it's pretty confronting. Take the area equivalent to Sydney's metropolitan zone. Now, if that was true, it would be around 0.5% of Australia's landmass. But guess what? Doesn't stack up.
Wait, what?
So Chris Bowen, in his social media video, shows the data captured by The Australian. And really he says this is not something that stacks up, in his words.
Sarah Eisen is a senior political reporter with The Australian.
He says in reality, they have drastically overestimated the amount of space we're going to need for these projects.
The New South Wales Agricultural Commissioner has looked at how much land renewables will take based on the plans of the Australian energy market operator, the people who, actually run the grid. And they found it's about 12% of what is in the newspaper today.
So, where did this 12% figure come from? Over the past few days, The Australian has tried to get to the bottom of it.
So The Australian asked Chris Bowen this exact question because it wasn't clear from the social media video. 12% is a very specific figure, and what we were told was that this figure comes from the New South Wales Agricultural Commissioner's report, and we were sent that report. But what that report focuses on is only New South Wales coverage. A lot of the graphics, a lot of the charts and everything says this is how much land mass in New South Wales will be needed. Upon asking again how that 12% figure was landed on, we did receive an incredibly long response, but it didn't answer the question. We have been able to determine that of the 800, 900 odd projects that have been mapped, around 6 or so are not going ahead. They've been discontinued or paused. So there may be some merit in re-looking at that, but it still leaves the question open of how the claim that what was represented by this group and reported on by The Australian, that is way overblown, that in fact the reality is that the land use is 12% of that reporting. Half a dozen projects that are paused at the moment or won't go ahead, that still doesn't reduce that land mass enough to give us the answer of how we got to that 12% figure that keeps being used. We also asked if, in fact, the minister was confused by these two pieces of data, if he did, in fact, mean that he was referring to New South Wales specific data when our reporting was about national data, and that's also what the mapping was showing. That wasn't responded to. We asked if any kind of apology or retraction was necessary. Instead, we heard that he was concerned about misinformation being spread by this group and the sorts of links that this group has to that nuclear anti-renewable lobby or side of politics, so to speak.
And here's the twist. Rainforest Reserves Australia has recently revised its 2-year renewables mapping report to expand the space it says the government's renewables ambitions will require. The conservation group now estimates existing and planned renewables projects like wind and solar will cover more than 483,000 hectares nationally. What has been Chris Bowen's response and the department's response to that development?
The response is that there is even more concern now that this data is very much publicly available. Now that they can see all of that data, they have even more concerns and believe there are even more flaws. We have asked what they are. We are yet to receive a response. It may still come. This is a very large data set that's taken over 2 years to compile. But it was something that, in their perspective, only raised more concern rather than, say, prompting an apology or a retraction about the original video from Chris Bowen.
Rainforest Reserves Australia fired back at Bowen's claim their calculations were way off the mark. In a press release, they called the claim unsupported, vague, unclear, and appears to mix up the New South Wales only data with its national figures. They told The Australian they're standing by their mapping and have called on the Environment Minister to share his department's data with them for review.
There are a lot of conservationists that are very positive about this work. Christine Milner comes to mind as someone who's saying we need to move away from coal and gas, as this group says we do as well. But she's similarly concerned about this blind move towards large-scale renewable projects that maybe we're not considering the damage they're doing because they're called renewable projects or clean energy projects, and the worry that that's going to get away from us. So you are hearing actually a fair bit of encouragement from progressives and progressive circles for sure when it comes to this kind of project.
Coming up, what about the other half of Chris Bowen's claims? The mapping that informed The Australian's reporting was done by Queensland conservationist Stephen Nowakowski. He says he's been arrested for his boots-on-the-ground activism and ran for the Greens in Cairns in the early 2000s. Sarah, Chris Bowen said in the video posted to social media in response to The Australian's reporting that Stephen Nowakowski and Rainforest Reserves Australia are
anti-renewable, pro-nuclear activists.
Is Stephen Nowakowski or Rainforest Reserves Australia either of those things, anti-renewables or pro-nuclear?
Well, they're conservationists that are concerned about the rollout of large-scale renewable projects that come, as they say, potentially at the cost of really rich ecological or agricultural land. Now, like many conservationists, they are saying we need to move away from coal and gas. There is no question, but it cannot be at the expense of biodiversity. So they're the sorts of people who are concerned about land being impacted in such a way that it causes more damage than relief when it comes to our push towards net zero. I think maybe pro-nuclear is something you could argue. It was something that Mr. Nowakowski was quite clear and transparent about, that despite this being a hard thing to admit, he thought that maybe nuclear did need to be considered, that it needed to be in the mix. He's one of the few Australian conservationists that feel that way, and he has been quite upfront about how it is somewhat of a turnaround or a shock. However, I think to say anti-renewable would be quite a stretch. He's a conservationist, is how he's described himself, wildlife photographer. He's incredibly concerned about the biodiversity of Australia. And he's also raised plenty of concerns as well about coal and fossil fuels and the ongoing role that they have to play. But to say that he or this group are some kind of incredibly pro-nuclear, staunchly anti-renewable lobby, and that is their agenda, I don't think quite represents the truth behind this particular organisation.
Sarah Eisen is a senior political reporter with The Australian. You can read her reporting and analysis, as well as all the nation's best news, sport, politics and business right now at theaustralian.com.au.